Good morning.
Hi, this is Molly again.
Hey, Molly.
Good morning. I'll call a special meeting of the board. We have a discussion and action related to COVID-19 pandemic responses, and also a discussion at this meeting today on action to replace the county highway engineer. I would like to do a roll call, just to assure the public that we're all here. Commissioner DeShaw?
I'm here.
Commissioner Dukert?
I'm here.
Commissioner Mills?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Storley?
Present.
Good morning, everyone. Also, I will read a statement before we start the meeting officially. The statement in this regard to having a conference telephone conversation for our board meeting based upon the statutes that I'll read. So in order to have meetings attended by telephone due to the COVID-19 pandemic, number one, it has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related peacetime emergency declaration made by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota Statutes Chapter 12, and they're quoted specifically. Number two, we have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting, wherever their physical location, can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony offered at today's meeting. Number three, we have also ensured that the members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion and testimony and all votes of the members of the body. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting the meeting on the Cook County website. Number four, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have determined that it may be unfeasible for County Auditor Brady Powers, County Attorney Molly Hicken, County Administrator Rena Rogers, and members of the Board of Commissioners to be physically present at the county boardroom at the Cook County Courthouse. Number five, all votes will be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue will be identified and recorded. Would you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, I'm going to ask you to take a look at the agenda, and do we have any adjustments to the agenda that was published? If you just state your name, if I don't hear anything, we'll move on. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Commissioner Mills. I make the motion to approve the agenda. Over.
Thank you. Do we have a second or support?
Support, Storley. Over.
Thank you. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Storley?
Yes.
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye. Over.
Commissioner Dukert?
Mr. Newkirk, aye. Over.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
And Commissioner Bersheim is aye, so passes unanimously. This is the time for public comment period. Do we have anyone in the audience that has shown up, or do we have any statements or emails that have been received? Interim Administrator Rogers, I guess I'm asking you that question.
Mr. Chair, no, we do not have anyone present, nor have we received any letters to be read.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the discussion and action related to COVID-19 pandemic response. And I know that we have Grace Grinager with us. I heard your voice earlier. And do we have Mike Keyport with us this morning too?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, good. So thank you two again so much for this ongoing work that's being done. It's really gratifying in even these tough times to know that we've got people such as you working for the public and for the county. It's just it's really gone extremely well considering the circumstances, and we're just really appreciative of you and your work. Who would like to start off with a report?
I can go. This is great. And
Okay.
Thank you for having us here to read these updates. So I can start with the situational update, the case count as of yesterday. So as of May 4th, there were 7,234 lab-confirmed cases of COVID-19, 4,212 of which no longer need to isolate, and 428 deaths in the state of Minnesota. 1 week ago, on April 28th, there were 4,181 lab-confirmed cases in the state, and 1 month ago, on April 4th, there were 865 lab-confirmed cases. There continue to be no lab-confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Cook or Lake counties. The state is making progress toward its goal of being able to offer 20,000 COVID-19 tests per day. Yesterday, on May 4th, labs processed 3,309 Minnesota-based tests. 1 month ago, on April 12th, labs in Minnesota processed 1,196 tests. So we are still far from the goal. However, we have nearly tripled testing capacity statewide this past month. This is a pivotal step toward bringing the speed that the virus is spreading under control, as it allows us in public health and healthcare the ability to find, test, and help quarantine close contacts of lab-confirmed positive cases. In the state work group on expanding testing capacity for priority populations, we focused our efforts this past week on expanding the capacity for testing in long-term care facilities and jails and correctional facilities across the state, since people living in these settings have a much higher chance of becoming infected with COVID-19 due to its ability to quickly spread in these environments. Modeling continues to show a peak in the rate of new infections in Minnesota in the mid to late summer, with the possibility of a secondary peak sometime in the fall. This incident will continue long term as the pandemic will affect our state and community throughout the calendar year. News from our County Emergency Operations Center this past week includes I worked with Claire Shirley at Sawbill Canoe Outfitters and Jim Boyd with the Chamber of Commerce in his role as business liaison for the EOC to develop health and safety tools for businesses that house seasonal employees. The document breaks this topic into 3 sections: how to introduce employees into the community safely, the second being shared housing safety considerations and what to do if an employee in shared housing has COVID-19. That's the third. Jim and Claire distributing the tool, and Jim Boyd may set up a Zoom meeting for employers that want to ask me questions about public health and housing employees during the pandemic. I'm adding content from Minnesota Department of Health and the CDC to the employee safety section of the Visit Cook County Best Practice Guidebook for businesses. In the EOC, we're also exploring ways to demystify the testing process for community members. We continue to get questions about testing locally. One idea we have is to work with Sawtooth Mountain Clinic to create a video that walks the viewer through what the testing process looks like locally to hopefully clear up questions and confusion that people might have. Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, North Shore Health, and myself, representing County Public Health, will be meeting this Thursday with Grand Portage Health Services and the Grand Portage Tribal Council to talk about COVID-19 preparedness throughout our community. Lisa Sorley, our PIO, is working to develop a social media campaign that interfaces with the Hub site and invites community members to share ways that they're supporting themselves and others through the pandemic. Last Thursday night, I participated in a panel on COVID-19 on WTIP with Grinager, Dr. Farshman, Dan Shirley, and Linda Jurek. I also gave my weekly updates on Monday morning to WTIP. So as the state's testing capacity increases, there's a conversation happening in public health about contact tracing, which is the process of interviewing positive cases and reaching out to their close physical contacts to urge them to quarantine. The Minnesota Department of Health currently does this, but this will likely change and more people will be added to the effort. So counties are being asked if we have the capacity to participate. Currently within Cook County, we do not have that capacity. However, regionally with our 4-county community health board, we're exploring whether we can find ways to facilitate the expansion of contact tracing in Northeast Minnesota. The community support line recruited around 12 volunteers and is planning orientation and training. This resource will provide coping skills and link to other behavioral health resources as needed, and the line is set to go live sometime mid-May. And finally, we received the good news that we've been chosen to host an AmeriCorps service member for the summer to work within the EOC. So this person would be employed through True North's Emergency Response Initiative. It's an AmeriCorps site, but they would be supervised by me within the EOC, and they would work locally. The service member would serve 10 weeks, June 8th to August 15th, 35 hours a week, and would receive a small stipend of $650 every 2 weeks. This individual will help connect our Emergency Operations Center to different community agencies that are working to address hunger and food security issues, and would add capacity to good work that's already happening around our community, since demand for food support is growing as a high percentage of our community members are currently unemployed. This is an important response effort since we want to make sure that everyone's able to access healthy food. I would encourage commissioners and anyone else in the community to spread the word and send people who are interested to apply at the True North AmeriCorps site, which I can include in the minutes. We are planning to put a media release from the EOC about this opportunity today. And those are all my updates.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll call on each commissioner now in a roll call to see if they have any questions for Grace and comments, and we'll move on to my Keyport. Commissioner Mills, questions, comments for Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. Thank you, Grace, for the update. And I guess the only question I would have is just where things lay with the mask situation, if that's something we should be pushing or promoting more of. And otherwise, thank you for your work. And I know there's many hours spent on it.
Okay, Grace, would you want to respond to the mask?
Sure, I could respond to the mask. So we continue to have our mask drive going, and we had originally put out a call for 1,500 masks, and we're getting very, very close to that goal. And we've created a list of different places to distribute the masks, and then hold on, I have a child getting ready to go to school in the background. So once we have that goal met, I think we will continue to find ways that we can get the masks out to community members. I think that we can definitely encourage people in the community to wear masks, and we've put together some educational materials about how to do that correctly. I have seen people, pulling the mask down over their mouth to talk, and that really kind of defeats the purpose of wearing a mask. So I think if we're getting out messaging about wearing masks, we should make sure we're also having that kind of educational piece about how do it correctly so that it's having its intended effect, and also to help people get access to them, because I know it's hard if you don't sew and you don't have a friend who sews to maybe get them. So we're trying to think about ways we can make sure people are able to access them as well. So that's my response.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Duker? Questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. Thank you for everything that you're doing, Grace, and great job on the WTIP interviews.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
Commissioner Storley?
Yes, again, thank you, Grace, and for the good WTIP report and for your Monday updates, too. I think people in the county-wide appreciate all that you are reporting every week. So thanks again. Over.
Okay, and I have no questions or comments. So, Mike Keyport, would you have some comments and information to share with us this morning?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, community members. As Grace said, our Emergency Operations Center, of course, continues to remain in operation. I think I mentioned last week maybe that Cook County, of course, does have a mass fatality plan, and Grace and I got together and put our heads together and made some updates to that. So we put pen to paper, and we're working through updating that. When you think of there's sometimes confusion when you think of a mass fatality. You might think of a plane crash or a bus or something like that. Mass fatalities are based, on our ability to manage bodies. So because we don't have a funeral home in our county, a mass fatality in Cook County could look like 3 or 4 people's bodies. So it is still something we have to manage. The arena at the community center is one site. Jim Wienerman has been working on a layout of a plan for that facility to include curtains for privacy. Another facility Jim looked at yesterday, and I'll get more information, is some of you may be aware the laundromat used to be some type of dairy facility, which still has an operating walk-in cooler. So that might even be a better option for a temporary morgue site for us. So that's more to come on that. I think I spoke last week about the local state of emergency declaration. I did send some documentation to Molly for her review, but it's looking like we should not have to keep extending that local state of emergency according to the state of Minnesota under Chapter 12. I know that causes some confusion to the community members, but I'll let Molly research that. I too have been fielding some calls from community members regarding testing and their apprehension about going to the hospital, thinking that there's not enough testing being done for healthcare workers in their opinion, and they just don't feel it's safe to go into the hospital for what they need to go in for, that type of conversations in there. I guess they're legitimate concerns. The state of Minnesota did get a supply of masks and gloves for law enforcement. It's not a large quantity. It equates to about 10 masks per officer. So in our case, I believe we have 15 officers. So they would each get 10. Now there's another thing to that. These are the KN95 masks that can be decontaminated. And I know this sounds a little silly by putting them in a brown paper bag for like 5 days, and they actually decontaminate. So our local sheriff's deputies could actually remove these masks. So even though it's only 10 per officer, still a pretty good supply for our law enforcement, and I know Pat previously had some supply, and I do have some face shields that I purchased that I'm going to get to law enforcement too. There are frontline workers. We do have, I did get 5 gallons of the hand sanitizer that comes from the distillery out of Duluth that Lake County shared with us. So I did have a chance to experiment with that. It's a pretty good product. My safety background made me realize that even though this comes in a bulk container, and I did purchase smaller containers to make it more manageable, but I realized that these containers need to be labeled, so I did come up with labeling. We may have access to some bleach in bulk form too, so that would be the same situation. But things are moving along. That's what I have for you this morning.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. So we'll just go through a roll call. If there's any questions or comments for Mike. Commissioner DeShaw?
No comments.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. No, I don't think I have any questions. Thank you for explaining the mass fatalities a little bit. I know that's a scary thing for us to have to try to deal with, but it's most important to have a plan there. So thank you for your work, Mike. Over.
Okay. Commissioner Storley?
Thank you, Mike, for your work. And what do you do when you have like that gallon or so of the disinfectant? How are you distributing that somewhere, or what do you do with it?
We haven't yet at this point because I have only received the 5 gallons. We do have some more on order, and the state has promised us some too, which I have not seen yet. But likely, for instance, Soil and Water will be going back to work this month, and they would like some of the products like that for disinfecting their own personal vehicles and working out in the field. So we will be distributing it at some point here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Duker?
No questions. Just again, thank you for all your work. Over.
I would like to reiterate too, thank you, Mike, so much for what you're doing. We have a great team for our incident command, and we're very fortunate in tough times. Okay, so we'll have administrator update at this time. Interim Administrator Rogers, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So just a few updates. I've been receiving a number of emails, phone calls about the travel advisory. It was also a topic on our panel discussion last week. And since we passed that without a sunset date, I let people know it's not expiring on a certain date, and that at this time it's still in place because it's consistent with the governor's stay-at-home order, and that it's obviously it's a fluid situation that we're in, and we're always looking at, do we need to update things in one direction or another. So just letting you know that's still out there and people are still asking about it. I always mention to them that it's a recommendation. It's a way of alerting people on what our issues are up here, and that they really need to pay attention to the governor's stay-at-home order, which is still in place till the 18th, and his reference to what is essential travel. So just letting you know that's still out there. The courthouse continues to be closed, and people are still working at home, actually very productively. We had a MAT meeting yesterday, and it was really interesting to hear how well people are doing. I think communicating using the tools that we have, having maybe even more regular department meetings than they generally did. So everybody seems to be adjusting. And I think it makes a lot of sense since we know that they talk about a peak here actually being later this summer, not to bring people back and then send them home again. They're productive right now, so unless there's a real reason to bring them back, I think we can keep them in place until we get on the other side of this. Having said that, there is a meeting this week. I think the sheriff's involved with it. I'm involved with it with the district court. They're going to start opening up court administration and having some of the backlog of the court starting after the 18th. And so they want to talk with us about what that looks like in terms of cleaning the courtroom, security, other measures that we have in place, and how that might look, how we could support that. I anticipate that it would look like other court days where we would have security there, and so the courthouse would be open for that purpose, much like it is right now for our board meetings and our public meetings, where we have a deputy there. So anyway, that discussion is going on, and I think the court will have some sort of limited opening, very gradual. The two projects, capital projects that have more or less been on hold, we're trying to figure out how to move those forward. The Hovland Garage, as you might recall, had a little bit of work that needed to be done once the ground thawed. And so a contractor will be out there this week fixing some of the flashing issues and also finishing some of the groundwork that couldn't be finished last fall when the ground froze. And we'll also be looking at and hopefully proposing next week something with the old garage. So stay tuned for that. And then the courthouse windows, those have been on hold during this stay-at-home order. At this point, kind of looking ahead to the 18th to bring those contractors back to finish this work. And we'll put whatever safety measures around that we need to. But I think it will probably be reasonable since MnDOT will be starting the 61 project that, obviously the governor will be allowing some contractors up here with that unless they put that on hold, which I don't imagine that they will. And I think it would be consistent then to bring the installers back to work on these windows. So for me, that's the updates I have for this morning. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Okay, thank you. So we'll do a roll call on questions or comments on the administrator update. Commissioner Dukert.
Thanks, Rena, for everything you're doing and your WTIP interview. I did get a phone call from NPR on an update on our advisory, and just, the update was, does this now include seasonal residents? And I said it's an advisory, follow the governor's orders, and it includes everyone, even people who currently live here. I took key points from the interview that you and Grace did on WTIP and just said, we just want everyone to be safe and healthy. So that's all I have. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. Thank you, Rena, for the update and your work, and especially thank you for the excellent job you did representing the county on the WTIP forum. I don't have any questions. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Starley?
Thank you, Rena, for your work, and yes, for your good reporting on WTIP. It was a very good interview, and any interview you do representing us, I know that we're in good hands. So thank you. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I would just like to reinforce what has been stated. You've really been a great service to us in these difficult times, and you have a lot of responsibility, not just being the interim administrator, but a department head as well. So thank you so much for that. So we'll go into item 4, discussion and action on replacement of the county highway engineer. it's recommended we have action on two things. Number one, approve temporary hire of Mike Tardy to act in the role of Highway Department head until a permanent replacement for Kristen Foster can be found. And number two, authorize execution of the attached agreement for temporary employment as Highway Department head. And I believe that we'll take those in two actions, or can they be one?
I think they can be one.
As far as the vote.
I think they can be one action.
Okay, very good. I agree. Okay, so who would like to start with that presentation? Rena, would you like to?
Yeah,
Or was it Molly or?
sure, I can start, and then perhaps Molly can talk about the agreement that she constructed. So, as you know, we were very sad to hear that our county highway engineer, who we shared with Lake County through a shared services agreement, had taken another position. And so one of the things that Kristen did, because she is really, truly a great professional, is to help us figure out how to navigate this process until we can hire a permanent replacement. And so she recommended a couple of different people to us as possible, either hiring through a consulting firm or hiring as a temporary employee in a department, an interim department head for the highway department role. And so I had an opportunity to talk with Mike Tardy, who is a retired highway engineer. He was here in 1988 through 1992. And I think when he left, the people I've talked to were really disappointed when he left. I think he was well-liked. He went on to work at MnDOT, ironically, in the job I think that Kristen's now taking. And then also, he was the highway engineer for Carlton. He is anxious and excited to come back and help us in this role. He's certainly got a lot of experience and knows the county as well. So we're very lucky to have him. He has, the contract is an hourly temporary contract, which has very specific roles that are allowed by statute, and I'll defer that part of the conversation to Molly. The proposed hourly rate is $100 an hour. If we were to go through a consulting firm, as Lake County is doing and as Cooch County is currently doing, the cost would be somewhere between $164 an hour and $200 an hour, I think is the going rate. So that's, we're getting, this is a very reasonable proposal. It actually, the cost will also include some travel costs when he drives up here, mileage reimbursement. If he has late night meetings, it might involve some lodging. But the total cost with him working less than 20 hours a week will be less than the current agreement we have with Lake County, or at worst equal to it. So I think we're staying within our budget and solving a problem as we head into this very busy summer season, where there are a number of projects that we'll be able to keep going by doing this. I'm going to defer now to Attorney Hicken to see if she has any more she would like to add.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right, this is Molly Hicken. So I'm wondering, I guess, Administrator Rogers, I did not upload the most recent version of the contract to the board packet. So did you do that?
No.
Okay. There are a couple of changes that have been made since the contract was uploaded to the board packet. One of them is to allow for the travel reimbursement. This is a benefit that's not typically available to temporary employees, but we are offering that to this temporary employee since he'll be traveling up from Duluth. And the other change is just related to the hourly restriction based on preliminary conversations. I had interpreted the part-time restriction to be up to 20 hours a week, and we've modified that to, I think we said 48 hours per pay period, asking that the hours worked average out to about 20 hours a week over the period of employment. So those are the two substantive changes that have been made to the contract. Otherwise, we're asking the commissioners to approve it basically in the same form that was attached to your board packet. The need for the contract, I'll just summarize that because there have been a lot of questions about that. Original discussions, we talked about Mr. Tardy being an independent contractor. That would be inappropriate for a couple of reasons. One, he's got a lot of responsibility as the highway engineer, and there are certain things we're asking him not to do, and certain things we're asking him to do. We need him to supervise employees, which is not something recommended but to do. We don't typically want an independent contractor supervising employees. We want a little bit more control over the methods of his work than we would of an independent contractor. The second, and I think more clearly understood reason, is that we need him to be covered by MCIT insurance. Our coverage, we need our tort liability limits that are statutory to cover his actions. So the statute won't allow an independent contractor or somebody contracting with other entities who is also providing professional services to be covered under the tort liability limits. So we needed to ask him not to work for other agencies or entities. And we needed also to ask him not to do certain activities that are exclusively allowed under statute to an appointed highway engineer. So, and there are other things that are different than our typical temporary employment policies under the employee handbook. As I mentioned, the travel reimbursement. So it's best to have a contract to just clarify all of those things. It does not, there being a contract in place does not morph him from an employee into an independent contractor. It just more specifically clarifies his terms of employment. So that's all I have to say, unless there are any questions that I can help answer. Over.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on a roll call for any questions or comments for either Attorney Hicken or Interim Administrator Rogers. We'll start with Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Molly, for clarifying a few of those points. I think we are extremely lucky to have Mr. Tardy and his talents and his profession to be able to help us out, because we're going into the construction season, and I know with Engineer Foster, she's pretty much laid things out as to what to be done, and we will depend on him to work with us, and also the fact that state aid needs to be considered here with a professional person signing on and off with all that. So I'm extremely happy that he's willing to come up here and back to his old stomping grounds. And the fact that he's kept up his engineer license too is really important, because he actually was here in the 80s. So he's been busy doing other things, but he still keeps up with his licensing. So thank you, Molly, for putting together the job description for what he'll be doing, and for Rena for working with it too also. Again, thank you, and over.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
Okay. Commissioner Dukert?
No questions. Thank you. Over.
Okay. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. Thank you, Rena and Molly, for presenting this, and I also want to thank Kristen and Pam for working on it as well, and just going through all the details and specifics, and clarifying what this role is and how it differs from the usual temporary employee or just usual employee versus the contractor. I don't think I have any questions. It looks, you had mentioned you weren't sure if the updated contract was in the board packet. I did see note of travel expenses being reimbursed. Is there something different between this uploaded contract and what you were talking about?
Commissioner Mills, I think the only difference is under item number 3, where we had up to 20 hours a week, that was changed to a pay period in 48 hours or whatever it is. So I think that's the change.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So this one.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay. And then of course the highlighted areas are going to be filled in and changed. But otherwise, no, I don't have any questions. And thanks to you for working on this. Greatly appreciate it. Over.
Yes, and Commissioner Bersheim here, I'd just like to say this is a win-win for everyone. Hopefully it is for Mr. Tardy as well. I was really concerned about what would happen if we couldn't find someone that was this qualified. And I think we worked out the best kind of contract that we could, considering statute and the insurance issues. So work well done to both Nina and Molly for getting this in order. And we're going forward in a very good way. And again, thanks to Kristen, because she had a role in this as someone that's very concerned. And we're very fortunate to be in Cook County.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I would entertain a motion on the 2 recommended actions that I did state in the beginning in the print and published packet. Who would like to move with that?
Commissioner Dukirk, I make a motion to approve both with changes as stated by the county attorney. Over.
Thank you. And do we have second or support?
Support, Storley.
Was that Commissioner Storley? Hello?
Yes?
Oh, I didn't exactly hear who was the second.
Oh, I did. Yes. Second.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
It's like a pink
Okay, any
flag
further
sign.
discussion or questions on this? Please state your name. Then I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Duker?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye. Over.
Commissioner Storley?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bersheim is aye. Very good. Passes unanimously. Okay, with that, thank you so much, commissioners and other staff, for all your work in making us go forward in a good way. So also entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn. Dukirk. Over.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner DeShaw, second. Roll call vote. Commissioner Storley. On adjournment. Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye. Over.
Commissioner Duker?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
One last call on
Chairman?
Commissioner Storley.
Yes. Are you not hearing me?
I didn't hear your
Okay, aye,
response.
Oh.
Aye, okay. Okay, Commissioner Bersheim, yes, aye, over. So thanks to everyone in the county for working together to be better in these tough times, and we're really doing well considering all that's going on. And we do have some challenges, but we just keep working together as best we can. I'm sure we'll just see that so much better that we can.